This is us a photo, and broadcasting live from actually south of Vancouver. And this is a place called White Rock, and I've been broadcasting from here last year. There were triplets in this nest, and you can see one of the parents there. It's a really beautiful, it's a really beautiful nest. Took a bit longer to get going. Let me just wait. I just have to get rid of the compass there. Wait a second. There's something in the settings there. Not quite sure what happened there. Let me just see why there is. I'm not sure why. Ah, there we go. That's better. Let me just zoom in and see.
Or zoom out wide and show Blaine Harbor.
No, I can't do that with. No, not with this one. I need the other one for that. But you'll be able to see one of the adults on the right-hand side, and the nest is just on the left-hand side. And David Hancock, who's with me today. Hi, everyone. Hi, Karen, Chuck. I've got a little bit of difficulties reading all your names, so please excuse that. Oh, you can see the typical harassing of one of the parents, and you can see the nest to the left. You may be able to recognize some chicks. Is that right, David?
Yeah, I was here last week, and there were 3 chicks. And I think I can see at least 2.
Yeah,
I can see at least 2 right now.
Okay,
and they're lying down.
They're lying down. Okay, I'm going to try.
There could easily be a third one lying in behind. So I mean, I have not. Nobody has reported to me that one has come down out of this nest. It's possible, but I haven't heard of that yet.
And the wonderful thing about this nest are 2 things. First of all, that we can actually look into it, which is remarkable. And the other one, that's triplets for the 2nd year, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, they had 3 young last week. So
yes,
it looks quite good.
So this is quite. So that those, you can see the crows, of course. So I'm going to try and zoom in a little bit better into the nest. So excuse me if I don't read all your names here, but I do see the comments coming in from Facebook, from YouTube, and so on. But I'm just going to try and zoom in a little bit. So 1 second.
So this is a little bit of.
You can sit down here if you want to talk, David. You can entertain everybody.
Oh, all right. Well, there's a little bit of justification here right now, because last week when I was here, I think it was the male brought in a young crow. And of course, there's only about 5 days in the life of a crow when they're really vulnerable to being caught by eagles. It's at that branching stage. Their wing feathers are still not quite fully developed, and they're running back and forth along the branch of wherever their nest was. And they're very vulnerable. The eagles watch for that. And then they come in and they knock them off the branch, and then they catch them as they're falling down.
You could just see a head there, I think.
Yeah, I could see 2. One of them lifted a big wing up while I was looking a few minutes ago through my scope. So there's at least 2 there, but the nest actually goes a long way to the left. There could be another one even back there left, and there could. What does look a little disconcerting right now when I looked at it with my scope is that the eaglets are kind of in a low part of the right side of the nest. It's kind of hanging down.
It's hanging down.
Yeah, it didn't look so good. Your internet connection is good. Okay. It says it's good. We don't need to worry. It says
there's nothing to
popped up and said good.
That happens all the time.
Okay.
Okay, we're looking at the. Let me brighten it up a bit.
Yeah, you're tighter in now. You have to go down a little bit, I think. You can't.
1 second, I'm going to try and
go up a little bit so that.
In the brightness.
Well, yeah. Also. Oh, there we are. Now you're getting in on the chicks. Yeah, there we are.
Can you see any?
Yes. Well, yeah, I can see 2 right there in the foreground. Oh, there's one lifted its wing up just then, very kindly. Was the other one please lift its wing? I think the one that lifted the wing up, his head is to the left, and so the head that you can see is one of the other ones. The question is, where's the third one? And because it's very difficult to see on yours, I'm going to go and get my scope, and the scope will show it.
Yeah, that's a wide view. That's the wide view again.
Yeah.
See.
This is this is a fascinating pair because we're right in the downtown, literally the downtown, the metropolitan area, the residential area of White Rock. It's solid houses all around here, though the nest itself is on the edge of the cliff going down to the sea and going down to where the Burlington Northern and Santa Fe, BNSF, Burlington Northern and Santa Fe railway runs across the almost at sea level. And this nest is in that kind of Burlington Northern right away, but it is totally surrounded by houses. We have another nest about a mile to the west, meaning to the right of the nest, and that's young in it. It's on it has two big, what is known as the gas and water right of way. There's a big right of way that goes across the hillside that delivers everybody's water and collects up all the surface water and so on. And I think the sewage lines, and it's a big tree that fits in that right of way. Then the next nest, another mile farther to the west, is one that we have difficulty seeing. It's rooted just right beside the Burlington Northern Railway, way down at water's level. But we look down into it, but with all the leaves on the trees right now, you can't see into the nest. And so I'm not quite sure how the young are doing. It was occupied. And the next nest is the Quamays Park, right at Quamays Point. And that has two young in it. They were a bit younger. And then if we went around the corner to the north side of that point, that's where our camera nest is, the so-called White Rock nest that has the cameras in it. And it has one young in it. And the nest next to it this year doesn't have any. There's a nest on either side that don't have any. And then the next nest down has, we're not sure, right? We think there's two in it. And the next nest down has two. When you start to go around the corner, I mean, I'm finding a lot of nests. We have 20 pairs of White Rock, the Peace Arch crossing, the border crossing, which is where we're looking at that across the bay here, all the way around this point that we're on and to what is called the Nicamackle River. And there's 21 nests along that between here and there. So the eagles are doing very well in this area. It's a very productive food source for them, particularly from where we are here, about halfway along White Rock, going from here to the point, and then all along the other shoreline. The top part of the beach is quite rocky and filled with little tide pools. There's sand below it, but tide pools on the higher part of the intertidal zone. And those tide pools are marvelous breeding areas for midshipmen, the little fish that really is the main food source of bald eagles from Northern California through to Alaska. Most people don't even know this little fish, although more and more people are learning about it. But it's the fish that feeds most eagles because it's so easily caught. It's a fish that is normally a deep water fish, but it comes into the intertidal zone to spawn. And when the tide goes out in the middle of the day in the summertime, these little fish, and they're only about 4, there's 2 sizes of them, a 4-incher and an 8-incher. And those little fish are in these little intertidal pools, and the eagles are walking through the pools watching for one of these little
David,
fish
can you see
to
all
wiggle.
3 now? I think you can.
Okay, I'll look with my binoculars. The brightness on the
I know.
on the screen.
1,
2, 3. Yep, you can see all 3.
See all 3. That's
all 3.
Great.
Yep, good. Yeah, that's reassuring again. Well, there's not many nests. I've got hundreds of nests, and raising 3 young, particularly 2 years in a row, it is not a common thing. We've had a couple of birds that did this, but this is one of the most successful breeding pairs, and it's right in the midst of houses. So houses are not a deterrent.
Here's a bombardment from a crow again.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can see them very well now.
But this may well be a crow that sacrificed one of its young to the eagles. So he's getting his. Yes.
Okay, David, can I just have a look at the comments now?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. I'll have a look. So thank you everyone for joining. So that was eagle biologist David Hancock. In case you haven't recognized his voice, he is one of the most profound and knowledgeable eagle biologists in the world, and it's wonderful to have him here. So I'm just going to look quickly at your comments, and so Kai Karen Martin, Gentleman Ghost, very nice to see you. Hi Sabi, Lee Ann, Mac Lady. I'm just looking at all the comments I can find here. Christy, and so on. I'm just going to switch my camera so you can see. I will try and add an extra camera next time. So just give me a second. Oh no, the front camera is not even appearing here. I don't know why. Okay, that doesn't matter. There's no front camera at the moment. It doesn't matter for whatever reason. I probably switched it off by mistake. It doesn't matter. That's all. So you're not going to see us today. It's more important that you see them. And I will add, hi Irene, you're most welcome. Where is this? Okay, we have 3 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Okay, once again, we are in White Rock, British Columbia. You can look that up, and when we look right across the bay, we are looking into Washington State, into the United States. So we are more or less at the edge here of Boundary Bay.
No, Boundary Bay is behind us.
Sorry, not Boundary Bay. What is it?
This is Semiahmoo Bay.
Semiahmoo Bay. I'm sorry. This is Semiahmoo Bay. And when if on low tide, you can almost walk across to the United States.
Yeah. Well, you can walk along the beach to
the United States,
except that you're going to meet some fairly friendly border guards walking along the same beach saying hello to you.
Hi, Sherry. Nice to see you all. Yes. So if you like this wildlife stream, then please give us some give us a thumbs up, please, and I will do my best to do more broadcasts in future, especially in the morning where you have very little shimmering and there should be a lot of activity. So I'm prepared to get up extremely early and broadcast from here so that you can enjoy this. It's quite an exciting nest. It's difficult to get such a nest, thanks to David Hancock, who made me aware of this just a few hours ago. I wanted to actually broadcast to you from White Rock Beach, but it wasn't possible because the reception wasn't good. So I'm very glad I found an alternative here.
It's kind of interesting. Since I was here last week, Christian.
Yeah.
The nest on the front side, the right side of the nest.
Yes.
One of the chicks is quite a bit lower down.
Okay.
And it looks to me as the nest is kind of sloughing off, maybe even has collapsing a bit. Maybe one of the support branches has broken because one chick is quite a bit lower than the other.
Okay, so this is maybe the last year that we could see this nest. So
the other, I don't know, did you and I do a program last year?
Yes, we did from here.
Yeah, from here.
Oh, yes.
But we had another nest over farther on the other side of this peninsula, which is number 173.
Yeah, but I never broadcast from there.
No,
not from there.
That one had 3 young also.
Yeah.
And this year, the nest in a storm in April snapped, blew the whole tree blew over, and the roots are all upside down. And the eggs that were in it at the time fell out of the nest as it's coming down and smashed against another big cedar tree. So I got to see where the eggs smashed and ran down the trunk. But that pair is now built a new nest. But I don't think at this late date they're going to re-nest. I think what they've done is built themselves a new nest for next year. This year they're out of luck.
Right.
I was there for an hour this morning,
Okay, I'm just going to explain. Hi, gentleman goes from New York. He says, I joined late. What is going on with the crows dive bomb? Is there the risk? Well, David Hancock is laughing because we see this all the time. And it's not like the eagles are completely innocent here, right?
No, this is a this is a bit of payback.
Yeah, payback, yes.
Normally, I'm waiting till this car goes by.
Yep.
Normally, eagles have a great difficulty trying to catch a crow. I mean, the crow has such a short wingspan, they
Yes.
can just outmaneuver an eagle. But there's about a 5-day period in the life of crows when they're what they call branchers.
Sit down.
They're in the nest.
Oh, good. Yeah.
They're in the nest, but they're not yet fully grown, and their feathers are not quite fully developed. But it gets a bit too big and crowded in the nest, so they do what they do all over the world. Crows do this, and there's a term for it because there's a lot of crows in the world. It's called branching, and they run along the branch, the nest, toward the tree trunk and back again for exercise. But it's also a wondrous signal to eagles and the adults that are back and forth across these slopes looking for crows. They will come in and see a young eaglet and attack it. I'm sorry, not a young eagle, a young crow, and knock it off the branch, and then they'll go down after it. It's falling. So they catch a lot of it. If you watch our cameras, a lot of crows young crows with their wings not fully grown get brought into the nest sites. So the crows are now getting their revenge back and giving this perching eagle
Here you go.
Full heck. Yeah, it is well deserved.
And you have seen that quite often, haven't you?
Oh yeah, in fact, when I was here earlier this week than last week, I saw one of the males bring in one of these young crows to feed the young. So no, it's a well-deserved hatred. But they only lose their.
There's one of the adults coming in now.
Yes, there's one in the nest, isn't there?
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah,
beautiful. So that's the second one, not the one that's sitting at the. You see, there's one sitting at the branch, right?
It's probably I can't see it clearly from here.
It is. I've got it on the screen now.
It probably brought in food, so there'd be not much other reason to fly and do a mess of big kids like that unless you've got some food for them, because they're just going to likely mob you if you didn't.
We'll zoom it a bit more.
Is he? I'm going to get my scope and have a look.
Yeah, you can see it clearly. Okay, I've zoomed in a bit more. The picture is not completely clear, so I apologize, but that's because of the atmospheric shimmering, okay? So if I did this early in the morning, it would be a lot better. They're kamikaze suicide mission, absolutely. So sorry about the bit blurry picture, but that's because of the atmospheric conditions, not because of the lens. So I'll zoom out a little bit again, but early in the morning, we would have much better conditions.
So I am sure people, if they've got big screens, not watching it on a silly little cell phone, if you had a big screen, you'll see that the male, probably the male, it might even be the female. I forgot to try and determine that. It's not easy. I mean, I suspect it's the female. She's feeding the one chick right now. So,
yes.
Well, dinner time. It's coming on toward evening. They probably got fed this morning. At this time of day, their crops hold a lot of food, a pound. So they could have had their pound this morning and maybe even got fed at noon, but we're getting past where they would get 3 or 4 feeds a day. We're getting to where they'd get a whole pound if it was available first thing in the morning and another pound at night. Yes. But getting a little extra in the middle of the day is always great.
The right side of the branch, so there's only one left, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely feeding. You can see it clearly.
Yeah, you can see it clearly.
Beautiful. We even get some crow sounds here. That's quite marvelous. It's really marvelous. So.
Well, it's quite rewarding to see a place that's so built up. I mean, this is This is a marvelous beachside community. It was one of the first kind of beach communities of Vancouver, and initially there was no road out here. The only thing that there was a train. It came out here from Vancouver on its way to Seattle. And so people used to have cottages out here. In fact, there's a really interesting story just a little bit down the road, a little bit to the east. The Vancouver Sun, our big paper, and in the late 1800s, so we're going back a couple of years now, right? In the late 1800s, the Vancouver Sun had this whole area was occupied by cottages, except they bought about a 30-acre hillside and they gave it away in 33-foot lots if you got an annual subscription to the Vancouver Sun. So you got a lot. Those lots today are worth $1 million, but you could have had it then for getting an annual subscription to the Vancouver Sun. So this is a well-known phenomenon who lives on the I don't know what year was it. I believe it was the very late 1800s or the very, very early 1909 or something. It was when, of course, there was no road access. Only access was by the train. And there's another community behind us over at what they call, on the other side by Boundary Bay, Crescent Beach it's called. And it's another one of these beach communities that originally was served by train. In fact, one of my family members had a cottage there right on the beach years ago. I never saw it because I didn't come along until 1938. So they'd already got rid of it by then.
Oh.
Yeah.
Look how beautiful we see the triplets now. The feeding is just marvelous. So I see at least 2 heads. I don't know if I see the third one.
Well, they were all easily seen a few minutes ago there. One is maybe full and still lying down. I can't see the little screen on your desk here.
I know.
I can't see what's what there. I have to get up and look at them with the telescope. But yeah, you don't have a wide angle. It's too bad you don't, because
no, not today. But
right directly behind it, the way the nest is situated. If you were to pan out just a little bit, you would see the entrance of the Blaine Harbor, and it's called, now I'm having my memory lapse. I can't. What? Hello. What's the name of the harbor in behind Blaine? The harbor in behind Blaine. I can't think of it. One of the neighbors is. Yeah. And my warehouse for my company was right on the waterfront there. And we looked out onto that harbor of Blaine. And I've got, I think it's 7 or 8 nests around that harbor. And if you were to pan to the right here,
we're doing a live
I have another 5 nests on that side. So there's a lot of eagles in this region. It's on his site.
It's on my site. Sassephoto, Sassephoto. Just Google me and you'll find me.
Yeah, one of the neighbors who has a big scope in his front porch, they've monitored these eagles for years, and he's just having a conversation with us here. He loves his eagles. Well, I mean, wherever people know of their eagles, they love their eagles. And so, be very good. And that's much of my time is spent running around trying to make sure that somebody isn't cutting one down for some development purpose. Or if they are going to cut it down, we often get called in and to mitigate it. And I'll come up with a plan that I can move that nest over 100 feet or something and keep the birds nesting in their territory. So we've done a lot of that. In fact, we've got 25 nests out here in the area here. They're all built in. The eagles are nesting in our nests because it's the trees aren't nearly big enough in many cases. Oh, there goes the adult.
Just flew below the nest.
He just took off. So often the trees that are left here aren't really big enough to support a nest on their own, but we can go in and build into the tree a framework, and every one of our frameworks has been occupied by eagles. There's a few little tricks about it, but it's pretty simple business. And so we've enticed eagles into areas where they weren't, and we've also replaced eagle nests in their trees that had to get cut down for developments, for roads, for whatever, and now we've given them a replacement.
David, I mean, this is a great topic actually, because you wrote actually an article for some major newspapers about the development, also the flourishing of eagles. Maybe you can talk a bit about the whole of North America in that regard.
Well, yeah, I'm working on my biography, and I've just been working on the chapter about how we have mitigated nests that are threatened for development, and how we've gone in and studied that nest and the neighboring nests, and where could we construct a new nest that's not going to conflict with the neighboring eagle nest, and keep this nesting pair happy. And being that I've spent 70 years now watching eagles, I'm kind of tuned to what they need and how they think. And so I've been very fortunate that 100% of the nest, when we've been given the opportunity of determining the timing when a nest is taken out versus when we get to build a new one, if we determine the timing, every nest we deal with is successfully occupied. If in the early years, the government only called us the day somebody was cutting the damn nest down, well, it's already a fait accompli, and then it's a different thing. But if we get to have the planning, we can come up with a solution to keep those eagles nesting in their territory, and we have done so successfully every single time. So it's not complicated. It's just understanding what the needs of the eagles are, and then trying to replicate that need in an adjacent tree, or sometimes we have to put in a pole and a nest, and those can be occupied by the eagles equally as well. I mean, I've got 9 nests bordering the bay behind us here, which is Boundary Bay, and I've got 9 nests that are on big hydro poles, hydro towers, big towers. These are 144 feet up. And they are simply nesting in these towers because there's no trees. We've cut them all down. And in fact, I was this morning making arrangements with a farmer and where we're going to build a nest on his property. So that's going to be one of the nests that we build there's a very small window when you do it. It's from the 15th of August to the 15th of September. And so we're going to put his nest in.
Why is there such a small window?
Well, the small window is that you don't want to be seen building the nest, because if they see us in the nest, they don't want to come back. So what we do is we wait for the birds to fledge their young, which will happen sometime usually in July. And then as soon as they've fledged their young, after about a week, usually, sometimes 2 weeks in these town eagles, because some of you people live in towns and parents raising kids in town can't get rid of their offspring. Well, it's the same problem with eagles. If they raise them in towns, they tend to stay in their nest longer than they do in the wilderness. Anyway, the bottom line is the eagles, having fledged their young, the young stay in the area for about a week before the parents usually say, I've had enough of this. I've done my job. You can see you're losing a bit of weight. Now you're almost ready to make a 1,000-mile flight to the north, where all the rivers way to the north of us in Alaska and northern British Columbia. By July, they've all got dead salmon laying already on the sides of the rivers. We don't have that here yet. Our spawning salmon don't happen until November and December. That's when they all come back to feed on our dead salmon. And the eagles from all across northern North America, or at least half of it, from Saskatchewan, possibly even, we have yet to get any from Ontario, but it's likely, from Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, Alaska, all across the boreal forest, and even into the tundra lakes, they come and spend the winter here. And we get 35 to 50,000 eagles in the Fraser Valley here, which are these wintering eagles. If you've been and seen the big concentrations we get at the Harrison River or at the Vancouver landfill, these are wintering eagles that have come and flown south of where all the lakes and the rivers are frozen solid. We don't freeze up here. We're the first big river system that historically has never frozen up. So our salmon are available all winter. As soon as they spawn out, they die. The carcasses are on the sides of the river, and the eagles accumulate by the thousand. We counted 10,000 something eagles in 3 miles of one of the local rivers. That's usually the peak of that is about mid-December. Well, those northern birds, of course, are here only until spring comes, and spring in the Arctic isn't in February and March as it is here. Spring in the Arctic is in April and May. So the birds stay down here until usually March, and some of them leave in early March and late March. All of them pretty much leave by early April, and then they head back north because it's only then are those northern lakes thawing out. They're 2-3 foot thickness of ice is melted off, and all the fish that are in those northern lakes are now available to feed that huge population, northern population of breeding eagles. Did you pick up that squirrel that's running along the line?
No, not yet, but I'll...
Can you do that? Can you see him right there?
We see a squirrel, but that's not gonna... I could try.
He's so quite funny.
I'll try and do it.
Well, you probably can't now, because now he's run off. He's run off. There was a squirrel running across one of the power lines right in front of the camera.
I'll do it next time.
Yeah, and he went 100 feet along there, running along the line. But he's gone now. He's gone into one of the next trees. Anyway, that was a diversion.
I'll bring the other camera. We can have both. Okay.
Yes, you should always have your wide angle, because what we're looking at behind this nest is Blaine, Washington, and wonderful bay.
Yes.
And this, of course, I mean, I've told the story.
Mount Baker, of course.
Yes, and Mount Baker, a little bit to the left.
Yeah.
I've told this story a number of times, but you may have some new people here. But here, right where we're looking,
Baker. Hang on.
Yeah, right here where we're looking at Washington State.
There you go.
In my early years, in 1953, when I started to do eagle surveys from the air, that's a long time ago, 1953, I came to the realization that our Gulf Islands, those are the Canadian islands, all had eagles nesting every mile, maybe a mile and a quarter. But I would fly across and cover the same islands. They're basically the same, except the border goes through. And on the American side, in Washington State, there wasn't a single pair of nesting eagles. So when I became 16 on April the 1st of that year, my dad loaned me his car, because I now had got a driver's license, and I, of course, got my pilot's license at the same time. And I came over here to find out what was happening. And when I got to the docks that I'm looking across at, and right behind this nest, all the docks were lined with Alaska fish boats. These are the fishermen who fish in Alaska all summer, but they live down here where it's a little bit warmer than Alaska in the wintertime. But Alaska paid a $2 bounty. Now, in 1950s and 40s and 50s, $2 was a lot of money. And if you shot an eagle in Washington State, or when you were traveling up the Inside Passage in British Columbia, cut the legs off it. When you got to Alaska, you got $2 for it. Well, gasoline in 1953 was 23 to 24 cents a gallon. So the Americans understand a gallon. That's 5 cents, less than 5 cents a liter in Canadian gasoline. So it was a huge sum of money. And if you could shoot enough eagles around your boat docks in the wintertime, you could pay for your entire gas all the way up to Alaska to go fishing, and then all the way back again. They they have estimated that just over 1 million eagles were shot.
A million?
Oh, 1 million eagles. About 200, or no, yes, 200,000 were 211,000, I think, were paid a bounty on. But most fishermen, after they shot an eagle, never got around to picking it up because it was too much risk and too difficult to get into the shore where there's rocks and so on. So they just left them. And so there was a bounty paid on 211,000, I think, but they figured that there was over 1 million eagles were actually, no, I said that wrong. I think it's 111,000. The bounty was paid on, but seven, and they did a study, and 7 something were shot, nearly 8 for every eagle that was killed.
So it's around 1 million.
Around 1 million eagles were shot for that damn bounty. And of course, the eagle was totally eliminated in coastal Washington. Since they didn't pay the bounty in British Columbia, we still have a lot of eagles. So that worked out really quite well. Yeah.
We're doing a live broadcast.
Yeah. There's just a car going by and stopped to say hello and wonder what we were doing. You see the carrot up in the nest. That's
all 3 of them.
Yeah, all 3 of them. So if you wondered how many there were, there they are. There they are. All lined up to be counted. Thank you. So these birds are probably 7.5 to 8.5 weeks of age.
So how many weeks do we have till fledging?
Yeah, almost another month.
Another month. Okay.
Almost 3.5 to 4 weeks. Eagles normally fledge on the 83rd or 84th day. And when we did studies in the wilderness, it was pretty consistent. As one might expect, in the towns, there's more variation. But and that doesn't account for a bird that might get blown out of the nest early. I mean, sometimes when they're doing their jumping up and down in their exercises, a gust of wind will hit them and they're gone. They just don't make it back to the nest.
That's beautiful. Look at the one.
Yeah, that one's excellent. See, that bird is
winger sizing.
Winger sizing. Yeah, there's a lot of terms that our people who follow our our webcams have come up with. The one I really love is when it starts to rain when the kids are small. Mum comes in and she mantles over them where she puts her wings, and it's called a mumbrella. That's a kind of neat but very, very descriptive term. She's the mumbrella. This is doing winger sizing. Anyway, there we are. The chicks will probably fledge, if it's all natural, about the 83rd, 84th day, which is really the 12th week of age. And by the 10th week, the wing feathers are fully grown, or during that 10th week, they're fully grown. And because when they're growing, the sheath part, the base of the wing, and you can see it when the big bird here flopped its wing, the base of the wing is very bluish. And that's full of blood. That's the nutritional area from which the feather is growing out. So when the feather is grown out fully, the bird has to kind of seal that off. But just before it seals it off, it doesn't leave all that nutrition in there. It sucks it back into the body so that the feather is totally dead and hollow.
Right.
And so at that last 10th week, the eagles sucked back in all that nutrition from every one of the 10 primaries and the 12, 14 secondaries. And so they have this huge gaining of this nutrition into their body. And in the next 2 or 3 days, all their pantaloons, the body feathers that cover their legs, they just shoot down. You can watch these darn feathers grow. And what the bird is doing, it's converting all that nutrition that it sucked out of all those big wing feathers all at the same time and put it into growing the last of the body feathers.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly, I see some comments coming in. First of all, I want to greet very warmly Osprey Mama here. It's wonderful, from Florida. You remember her, David.
I know her. Hi, Osprey Mama.
She's here. And then Gentleman Ghost is asking a question here. What is the percentage of offspring size on average? 1, 2, or 3? Maybe you can comment on that, right?
Well, yeah. The size is related to the fact that eagles lay their eggs basically every 3 days. It takes 3 days from the time when an egg yolk is released from the ovary into the what is called the body cavity, where the infundibulum, a big kind of funnel, catches it. And in that funnel, in the lining of it, is where all the sperm is waiting from when the bird was mated. And as that yolk gets caught up, the sperm come out, and one of them gets to unite with that egg, and now you have a fertilized egg. And that egg, from that moment, takes 3 days to travel down that both fundibulum and then the oviduct until the egg gets all its calcium and so on at the end and is laid. The next egg is released from the ovary another 3 days later, and 3 days. So eggs are deposited every 3 days. Now, most eagles only lay 2, but occasionally they lay 3. About 10-15% of them lay 3 eggs, but they're always basically 3 days apart, because it takes that long, 3 days, for the egg to come down the oviduct. So for the rest of the bird's life, if mom and dad started to incubate the eggs when they were first laid, and then continued to sit on them tightly and keep them warm for the whole time, the eggs are going to hatch 3 days apart. And that means the first chick has got a 3-day growth advantage on the second one and 6 days on the third egg. Now, if there's not much food, you know what the result is going to be. The big one is going to get all the food, and the little ones aren't going to. Well, as you can see here, where there's lots of food, and in the cities there is lots of food, more food in the cities than in the wilderness areas, they do very well. They usually raise all 3 chicks. So there they are, 3 days apart being laid, 3 days apart being hatched, and they stay 3 days apart as they're growing up. But if there's not much food, the bigger chick will peck and sometimes kill its late growing siblings. Not a good thing.
Here's a question from Osprey Mama. Let me read it out. David, hello. It doesn't look like the nest has branched for eaglets to learn to branch as they do here in Florida. Does this cause development problems?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, Osprey Mama. Many of the nests, and this is a perfect example, they have built this nest in the very top, in the branches on which the nest is hung are only 1.5 to 2 inches thick. This is not a good nest for eagles, and there are no big branches above the nest which they can branch onto. You will recall there's a term for it, branching, and as the chicks get big in the nest, they start to jump around onto the nearby branches. This is before they fled, meaning they make their first flight from the nest tree to a new tree. But branching is jumping around that tree. And this nest offers very little branching, but it does offer something, and that makes up for it, and it's made up for it here every year. And that is, the top of this nest is totally open.
Right.
It's not confined. Sometimes nests have branches not that high above the nest, and the bird can't actually open its wings properly, and so therefore it doesn't get to exercise. Here, at least the birds get to exercise and jump around. So they do get good exercise. And as we've seen, all 3 of these grew up last year and fled. A few years before that, they had 3 young as well. So, it's not all that bad. It's just that it doesn't have those nice big branches your pine trees in Florida have. So they adapt. They adapt, in this case, to jumping around the nest, practicing helicopter flights where they go straight up and come back down, because the key is them developing talon, foot, and eye coordination so that they can grab a branch and hold on. That's what the first training is all about, because when they make that first flight, if you're out in the wilderness of the West Coast, not here, but if you're out in the wilderness where most of the eagles are, there's a very thick, totally unforgiving undergrowth. And if they miss that first landing and they go down into the understory, they're probably not coming back out. It's too thick. They can't fly out through it. So they're going to perish down there. So getting that exercise, that coordination developed between their eyes, seeing a branch and being able to actually grab it, that's the thing that they develop while they're jumping around, either branching on branches or while they're jumping around the nest and doing their little helicopter flights. So here they tend to do helicopter flights up and down, but not going to other branches. Both work.
But the danger, of course, with helicopter flights is sudden wind gusts, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the big risk on all of this, is will the bird be able to coordinate a gust? They learn eventually, of course, to do that, but that takes time, and maybe the gust comes before it's learned to feather its, to fan its feathers and properly coordinate them and land properly. So yeah, gusts of wind take a lot of chicks. And if you were to talk to the people at Owl, the big rehab center here in Vancouver, and they'll get a dozen chicks in the next little bit. They probably already got a dozen. Many of those will have come down to the ground because a gust of wind caught one wing and down they came. Good question.
Excellent, David. My goodness, you've talked a lot. And Osprey Mama says, thank you, wonderful info. Nest is perfect. Osprey nest. And if you wouldn't have told me, the eagles built it. Yeah. So
yeah, no, the eagles built this nest. This is not one that we built. We were going to build a nest in this tree down a little lower, because the first nest they built in the tree, actually in the tree a foot or 16 inches to the other side, that one broke. And we were going to go up and build them a new nest when they went off on migration. But before they left, they rebuilt this nest on the top of the next column. So it's working fine. I mean, if it collapses, and part of it looks like it might be collapsing right now, we might get permission to go up and do a fortified nest that will last a few more years. But the problem here is this is not really an adequately large tree. It's not a tree they would be nesting in the wilderness. But it's the biggest tree around, so they're nesting in it. They're adapting. Yeah. I can't read any questions that are there.
Okay, I'll come in a moment. 1 second.
Yeah. Christian is
yes. Anyway, next time, I was so excited, and I was running around this morning, so I will get a second camera either tomorrow or after tomorrow. I think tomorrow is all rain, unfortunately. We're going to go out to the peregrine falcon nest tomorrow, David and I, but I've looked at the weather forecast, David. It doesn't look very promising. No, unfortunately, but we'll have another look.
Yeah.
But next time I come here, I'll build up another camera, and I'll give you a beautiful panorama view of the whole area, and then you'll see what it looks like.
Yeah, we have a peregrine falcon eyrie that I guess you covered it slightly before. That's built. They're nesting in a rock quarry that the people are wanting to blast this quarry, and all the gravel was coming down and around the nest. I mean, it's horrendous that this is allowed, but they have a permit to do this, and the Game Branch Fish and Wildlife are a bit reluctant to stop them. So there's a lot of people protesting this quarry.
Here's another gentleman ghost again from New York. I wonder if you're sitting at Starbucks again. I know you do. Do bald eagles even have the ability to attack another bird in defense in flight, like crows? That's a good one.
Well,
yeah.
The first, to answer the general question, absolutely. They get attacked by each other. By one eagle attacking the other. Bald eagles commonly are attacked by golden eagles, or they attack golden eagles to get their dinner, and they'll be attacked back. Ospreys, if an osprey has his dinner stolen by an eagle, that osprey is going to be trying to split the hairs down the back of that eagle. So they do get attacked seriously by some bigger predators, but they're less seriously attacked by all small predators. I mean, and other birds like crows and gulls and swallows and starlings. All of these little tiny birds because of their tiny, small wingspan, have such tight turning radiuses, they can make just a fool out of an eagle. So they can dive at him with impunity and not really worry about themselves getting caught. Though there are records of every one of those birds I've talked about getting on occasion too cocky and getting snagged by an eagle, but generally they aren't.
David, that's an interesting question, by the way, because you know that I'm at Okanagan Lake quite often now, and they have a lot of osprey nests. And can you say something about ospreys versus eagles, how they protect each other, the ospreys?
Yeah. Well, osprey is a marvelously adaptive bird, just like bald eagles are. They're also riparian. They only want to be around water. And ospreys are even more so than eagles, because ospreys only catch basically live fish for food. Eagles will, for half the year, live on dead salmon. The other half, while they're nesting, they need to catch something live because it's got to be nearby the nest. But they'll also pick up a dead rabbit on the roadside and a run over drake mallard and so on. So the bald eagle is much more adaptive in that sense. They're more versatile. But ospreys are the superb fishermen, and they're very much smaller. Most people don't realize, but an osprey only weighs 4 or 5 pounds. Which is pretty tiny compared to even a small male eagle is probably 7 or 8 pounds. And the females most of the ones we get here are 11 to 12 pounds. Some of the big Alaska birds are up to 14 pounds. Yeah. So ospreys are much, much, much smaller, and therefore simply are not that strong when it comes to out competing strength-wise with an eagle. But because they're so light, and they have these huge wings, they're actually more highly maneuverable. And they can actually put up a good battle when they're attacked by eagles for their fish. But the osprey does something else. If the male, or whichever one of them has caught this particular fish and is being attacked by a bald eagle, the partner of the one being attacked comes in and defends it. And eagles very, very, very quickly learn that if this is an aggressive pair of osprey, we'll just let them have their dinner, because they are going to get their back ripped open, because the ospreys are fierce attackers. In fact, they're one of the few birds that you can count on them attacking people who band their chicks.
Yes.
It's consistently dependable. You're going to be attacked in the nest when you go to band osprey chicks. Rare with eagles. Horned owls are another creature that regularly attacks the banders. So Mahara is calling me.
Well, I'll give you another question here from Osprey Mama. She says, David, if you end up building eagle nests, which you do, of course, how come man-made eagle nests never have a perch above the nest like my friends build when they do that for an osprey nest for parents and juveniles?
Well, you're saying that, but that's simply not the case.
Okay.
When I build a nest on a pole, we always put up 2 big poles, perches. Usually they're each are 10 feet long, and one is in the last number of nests I built with on poles. One pole is at 6 foot above the nest, and the other one is 10 foot above the nest. Now, when we build nests in trees, we very often put 1 or 2 limbs that stick out an extra 5 or 6 feet past the nest. So instead of the nest sticks, the big foundational sticks or branches that we put in, which may be 3, 4, 5, 6 inches thick, instead of just being 5 or 6 feet long, we may get 8, 10, 11 foot long, so that they stick out and they become both landing perches for the adults coming in, but they also become branches for the chicks to practice on. So no, I'm very aware of doing that. Sometimes the trees, and particularly these small trees like this one, if we had to build a nest in the top of this tree, well, short of wiring in another artificial pole above this, it would be very difficult. And in a tree of this strength, every time you have to wire something else in, you're weakening some of those adjacent branches. So you're having a trade-off. Are you making another perch, or are you making another weak spot in that tree? Right. So you get to the heart of the kind of decisions that I have to make when we're up there, and I'm trying to make a nest that's going to be safe but last a few years, and so you've got to some of the heart of the questions that I have to try to raise. But if I get to build a whole nest on a pole, I always put big perches above it, and they are always used. So yeah, you're quite right. Ospreys, however, it's interesting, you should have picked this out about ospreys. Ospreys generally, in a natural circumstance, don't have perches above the nest. They will nest, most common nest for a wild osprey in wilderness areas is a tree trunk that's broken off, snapped off in a windstorm. And so there's maybe the 16, 18-inch base, and they build a nest up on it. Now, ospreys so adapt to nesting on man-made platforms that there's probably 10,000 ospreys nesting on platforms. And then if you're building a platform, when I built them, I've also put perches above them. But lots of people don't put perches above a nest platform because ospreys don't demand it. Eagles really love it. But you just can't always get the proper height and still have a branch up there that you can sacrifice, in a sense, to attach another branching perch to.
Yeah, whilst we're at it, can you compare the fledging of ospreys and eagles? That's a good one, right?
Well, fledging is learning to fly, and they both do that very well. Yeah. I don't remember offhand what, and you might remember because you've photographed an osprey. I don't quite remember what the date of fledging is. Right. Like in eagles, it's pretty, in the wilderness area, it's pretty consistent, 83, 84 days. It can vary if they get blown out or so on. Ospreys fledge at a much, much younger age. They're faster growing. Of course, there's not much to them. They're only 4 or 5 pounds. So, it doesn't take as long to grow that big. That's the bottom line. So they fledge much more quickly than do eagles. And same with peregrines. Peregrines fledge on about the 40th day. So they have a much faster growth. Yep.
Good. Well, I think, I think we'll slowly close it for today. I think that was a very nice first broadcast. So please, that was David Hancock. Thank you very much to David Hancock. He's the eagle biologist here. We're just jumping in.
I always enjoy talking about my eagles. I mean, these are right in the heart of where I've been studying them for 70 years now.
I mean, we're very fortunate to have David Hancock here. Can't believe that he's 83. I can tell you, if I ever reach 83 and I'm like that, I'll be extremely happy. Just amazing what energy he's putting into this. So thank you for everyone for taking part, and please give us a thumbs up. And if you leave sufficient encouraging comments there, I will definitely come back really soon, in about 2 or 3 days, and do further broadcasts, especially early in the morning where there's less shimmering, and I'll keep you up to date as much as possible. And then David Hancock and I will probably meet again at the peregrine falcon nest we just talked about, right?
Wonderful. So, wonderful. All right. Good to talk to you.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody stay safe. That's the big thing. Stay safe.
Stay safe. And next time I'll have more cameras. Let me just see if I can switch over now. No, I still can't. Okay, but next time I will switch, and you'll see us too if you want to. Okay.
Oh, they're far better just looking at the eagles.
Thank you for all your kind comments. Okay.